Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Mayorkas, I want to thank you for being here today. I do want to say a couple of things, though. I'm not trying to get too deep into this, but I know this is an oversight hearing. Unfortunately, though, the larger picture is that this is really about the effort to impeach you. I also serve on the Homeland Security Committee. And one of the members of that committee talked explicitly about the Republican effort to impeach you, the two committees working in coordination. He said something about, pay attention, you can get the popcorn and watch this because it's going to be a lot of fun. Unfortunately, you've been sort of thrust into the middle of that, and not your doing, but that's where we are. And there are also efforts, obviously, to impeach President Biden. I've seen articles of impeachment with respect to that. The first articles to impeach you came out 2 years ago. I'm not even sure you'd started unpacking in your office yet, but I do appreciate the fact that you're doing a very tough job under very difficult circumstances, and I want you to continue working forward on that. There's a couple of things that I hadn't really wanted to get into, but my Republican colleagues have made so much about it, and that's the CISA disinformation issue. And I know there are different views about that. We've done this on Homeland Security as well, but I do want to point out that I think there's an important role for the federal government to play in dealing with disinformation, and by that I mean false information. The Republican election deniers, including former President Trump, that's disinformation that needs to be addressed by the government, not just to deal with it in the past, but because of upcoming elections. I know there are election officers across the country at the state and local level who've been trying to put together a plan to deal with these issues. A lot of the disinformation comes from overseas, but we get some of it here in the United States, even by national elected officials. Some are members here in the Congress. And I think it's important for us to address that, to make sure that the elections that are done in 2024 are done in a way that's consistent with the law and that allows people to base their decisions on real information. And also, I want to say this too. I mean, the election deniers and the false information that's been put out there has put a lot of individuals at risk. Sometimes their lives have been threatened. These are people who are volunteer election judges, the state and local level across the country. Some of them had to move. There was one in Arizona I read about who, his life had been threatened. And it's not just the election workers either. Nina Jankowicz, who was actually worked at DHS briefly, got the same kind of treatment. And so she came under attack, again, by, in some instances, members of the House Republican caucus, to the point where she ended up having to not only resign her job, but she had to hire a consultant to help her with personal protection. And this is while she was pregnant. She had to go to some of her appointments with her doctor in disguise because her life had been threatened to such an extent. I'll close with this. I think that there are a lot of things that I would love to see this commission address. I made a personal appeal several months ago to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle about gun violence. I think you mentioned an aspect of that, which is domestic terrorism that's in some instances led to lone wolves committing mass killings. But we got a larger problem with it than that. But I can't get anybody to help me with the ghost guns issue. I've got a bill about raising the age for assault weapons from 18 to 21, which I thought would be a reasonable place to go, since we already have the raise the age place took place for handguns from 18 to 21 in the previous Congress and got bipartisan support. And it would be important, I think, too, to look at some of the other critical issues the country's facing. Cybersecurity, if we're going to dabble in the Homeland Security world. China just hacked our Commerce Secretary, and in May, CISA was breached, Microsoft, and the NSA. So these are very important issues to the American people. I hope we can take a look at these. One last point on the immigration piece. I was in a meeting on Friday with a venture capitalist in New York, and one of the things he said was that he's having trouble getting the visas taken care of to bring talent over from overseas. These are, high-tech jobs, engineers, and the like. So since he can't get it done in the United States, He's now setting up offices in Canada because they can get the job done there. I would love to see us address the immigration issue in a comprehensive way. Somebody mentioned H.R. 2 earlier, which I thought was kind of funny because Senate Republicans were telling us that that was going to be DOA when it got over there. So we know that's not a real solution. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman from Maryland yields back.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary,